What's up, guys? I've been sick this past week, not to mention the fact that I have to study for finals. Almost said train for finals. I have to study for finals. I have finals tomorrow and the next day, and then that's it. I'm going home. But yeah, I wanted to make this video about whether or not you should train when you're sick. And let me just say that yesterday was the first day I've been back in the gym after taking, I think, 6 days off. So, obviously, I don't believe you should be training when you're sick. The reason is that you kind of have to consider when you go in the gym to train, you're training for a purpose, and that purpose is either going to be strength or hypertrophy. If you don't know what hypertrophy is, I'll put a link somewhere over here to my detailed description. But basically what you're doing is you're damaging the muscle so that if your nutrition is on point, after you damage that muscle, your body will repair the muscle, and it will also try to adapt it so that it's a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. But keep in mind that this only happens in like ideal conditions. Like your training has to be good and your diet has to be good as well. Now I'm going to kind of switch gears. I want to talk about sort of the way humans developed from an evolutionary standpoint. And I think I kind of have to say as a disclaimer, I know that some people don't necessarily believe in evolution. That's totally fine. But this is what I believe, and this is what science supports. So yeah. But basically the process of natural selection is the idea that within a given population of people or organisms or whatever, there will be individuals that have certain traits from mutations that make them more likely to survive. So they have these favorable traits that make them more likely to survive, and the more likely you are to survive, obviously you're gonna live longer, and if you live longer, it's more likely that you reproduce more and you have more offspring. So what that means in the long run is that you these organisms that have these favorable traits will have more offspring, and then in time the general population will have a larger proportion of these organisms with these same favorable traits. Having a lot of muscle or being able to build a lot of muscle isn't really a useful thing. I mean, obviously, yes, muscle is useful for moving our bodies and for performing tasks, physical tasks, but as a form of energy storage, it's not very practical because muscle requires quite a lot of calories to maintain. So if you have a lot of muscle, you're going to have a very abundant food source. Especially way back when, thousands of years ago or whatever, food wasn't that readily available. So having a lot of muscle would make it harder to survive, actually. Now, it is true that muscle can be used as an energy source if you break it down, but it's not a very efficient energy source because, like I said before, it requires energy to maintain that muscle. Whereas, on the other hand, you have fat, which doesn't require very many calories to maintain, but if you break down fat, it has a lot of calories within that fat. So from the standpoint of survival, fat is much more favorable than muscle. So basically the idea is that humans are not genetically predisposed to be building muscle in the first place. Now if you kind of think about being sick, for the same reason, I mean being sick way back when, thousands of years ago, you don't have medicine, you can't go to the doctor, none of that stuff. So if you get sick, you're relying completely on your own body to heal itself. And obviously what that means is that a lot of people back then, or a lot of the population back then, would die from being sick. But those individuals that had traits or certain differences that made them more likely to survive being sick, they would pass those traits on and on and on and on. And over time our population has become sort of resilient to these sicknesses. So what that means in a bodybuilding sense, basically if you get sick, and you train when you're sick, yes, you can induce that muscle damage that will sort of be that first step of hypertrophy. But while you're sick, your body is going to allocate most of its resources towards getting you better. Even if you create that muscular damage, there's a very, very small chance that you're actually going to be able to repair or much less adapt and grow that muscle that you were training. So, I guess the point is that I think if you're sick, you should take time off because you're not going to get a whole lot of your training. I mean, if anything, you're going to be burning calories. And that's another thing, guys. When you're sick, it's very likely that your metabolism will be running faster. So what I did actually this past week when I was sick is I increased my calories from where they would normally be. I raised my carbs by 20 grams, which is not a lot, but just enough to try to kind of combat any effects of my increased metabolism from being sick and try to make sure I don't lose a ton of weight. And I mean, I think it worked. I only lost like a pound, which is not bad at all. But yeah, don't train when you're sick. And when you're sick, you might want to increase calories. That's about it. See you guys next time.